How they doing? Anyone want to shout out? Yours? You're going, what's the matter?
Well, I've looked inside and I don't see any larvae.
Okay. All right. I lost a queen in the dreaded August queen, so I had to just combine a hive this past weekend. How about anybody else? I know Phyllis is upset because her bees aren't drinking the water, and they've been taking it very well, building up. When we went in there last Tuesday, they looked beautiful, and right after that, they stopped drinking the water. So I think it was me. I think it was me. I really do. They said, "Why did you let that guy in here?" Ryan, sir, how are your bees?
Well, I pulled my honey just like last week, so I waited late this season to see what had happened. So at least each time they seem to be having the last bit of production.
Are you going to pull honey right before?
I pulled it last.
He already pulled. He's not going to pull again, right?
Well, I'm making a bet. Like they seem to have a pretty good amount of food. My limit is I want to see four full frames of food in every hive, and most of them already have it. So I'm going to use the rest of this month to keep packing on food, and we'll see how it goes.
How about anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I did a hive check today, inspection, and I compared it to last month. I don't have anyone that's willing to do this with me, so I have to set up a camera and like film it and then go back and watch it and take notes. So I've got a lot more honey than last month. I have less brood, and I didn't find a queen, so I'm not sure how worried I should. Isn't it kind of where they start?
Well, actually, I'm going to talk about that shortly.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to address that.
Overall, I was pretty happy with it.
Good. Sir, did you have some?
Yeah, I caught a late. All my hives are doing pretty good. One is I caught it at July 4th and done it like you're supposed to. And now it's all together. They took the rubber bands, threw them out, and now it's all one big clump.
Big clump.
So I've got to go back in there sometime and try to figure out.
Well, you know.
I mean, it was just a small. It hadn't really grown that much since July.
4th of July, they're independence bees. You're not going to tell them what to do.
They do whatever they want.
They're independence bees. They're going to do what they want. So we'll tell you what we're going to do. All right, well, on that note, we'll go on. Always like to start with what's going on as far as the Beekeepers calendar from the University of Arkansas, our good friends at the University of Arkansas. So, according to the calendar, this is what the bees are doing, right? Bees, the cooler weather, there might be some fall nectar flow. I haven't personally seen many drones being evicted from the hives yet. And egg production will be reduced as the days get shorter, so that's not uncommon at this time of the year, right? Whoops. I didn't bring my mouse, so I'm sorry about that. What we should be doing as beekeepers, right? Harvesting any remaining honey, right? Which we've done. I'm going to have a different slide. I want to talk about the amount here, but this is from the Arkansas calendar from Dr. John, University of Arkansas. It says each colony will need about 50 to 60 pounds of food for the winter. Of course, after honey is removed, treatment for pest as necessary is applied. I went in last weekend and took out my Viroxan, which has done pretty good since I've used it. I've never had a mite count since I put it on more than 3, the Viroxan. I took mine off. And this time, now I'm trying the, I can't remember the name of it, but it's the thymol treatment. Apogard, thank you, yes.
How many pounds of honey are on the frame?
Next slide. It depends. Then some beekeepers will requeen colonies now. I think that's kind of risky if you don't have to, but some will. And of course, storing your stupers. Now on to that subject of honey. So this is from Texas Bee Supply. I just happened to be going through YouTube, and they had their live webinar the other night. And they recommend in colder climates, 60 to 70 pounds of honey. And in warmer climates, 40 to 50 pounds of honey. They say a full frame's about 7 to 8 pounds, medium frame about 6 pounds. So like Ryan likes 4 full frames. So That's about 32 to 4, in that range.
Are we a warmer or cold climate?
Generally considered a warmer climate. Yeah, generally. When they say colder, like they were talking like North New England and up in that area, back where I'm originally from, where it's just too cold for me to live now. You'd think the body weight I'd be okay, but I'm not. It's too cold, right? And then I made this little note. Keep in mind that most colonies that do die off end up dying in the spring, especially when you start getting some of that warm weather and they want to get out and fly and do things, but then there's no resources out there yet. That really messes with them when we get some of those warm days and there's nothing blooming yet. So just kind of keep that in mind, right? February, March can be a very challenging time for bees, especially as the weather gets warmer and the resources just aren't there yet. Okay, so then again, what's October? October, again, decrease in on-laying bees. See the colony population start to decline, right, as the bees start to die off. No more drones, and the remaining will be expelled from the hive. They will actually overwinter with some drones, because in order to survive, right, in the spring, they need to have drones out there to replace any queen cell. But not a lot. You won't, if you go through, you probably won't see a lot of drones. And then they'll forage as long as there's something out there. Has anybody seen goldenrod coming in yet? Yeah? Yeah, I've seen some. I just hate the smell of goldenrod when that's all I can smell in the front. To me, it's like it reminds me of high school gym locker room where just that nasty wet sock smell. One year I had just, for some reason, a lot of goldenrod when I went in there, and it was like, oh, God. I told Gladys about it, and she said, you sure you weren't smelling your closet? And I said, wow, honey, that's kind of cold. All right, so what might you do? They might require some feeding. Right? Common mix is 2 to 1, 2 sugar to 1 water. I personally never do more than a 1 to 1. If even a 1 to 1. Now I always do add a teaspoon of protein powder to my mix or a tablespoon, depending on how much I'm making. And I also like to add either Honeybee Healthy or Hive Alive or Pro Health, depending on what I have on hand. I got a free thing of Pro Health sent to me when I bought something, so that's what I'm trying now. It seems to be working fairly well. All right. Mite treatments, probably getting close to time to remove, depending on what the product labels are, whatever you're using. The ApiGuard is 2 treatments over a 14-day period. So I just put them on, so I'll have a few. I'll be done by October. Watch for robbing activities, right? Especially the weaker hives can get robbed at this time. Robbing can be pretty obvious when you see a bunch of bees. Almost looks like swarming, but there's a bunch of bees all over the hive, and generally the robbers are trying to get in any way they can. Looking for any cracks, crevices that they can cross. Because, up front's going to be the guard bees trying to fight off. So if they can sneak in somewhere, grab what they want, and get out, they're going to do that. And then another kind of point to think about, when you finish readying your hives for the winter, don't open them. Each time you open them, you break any propolis seals that they may have put in place to kind of keep the weather out. So
You close everything up, is there any circulation? Or?
You want to have well, you're going to, of course, have the opening. You might have it reduced, and then there's going to be airflow through to the top. Some people do put quilts on the top to kind of help keep it down. But yeah, you're going to have the main opening. It's going to be down. Yeah, it's going to be like, yeah. You're not going to close it off completely. Yeah. If the weather's nice, they're going to go out. Bees won't poop in their hive unless they're really, really sick, like with nosema. So if it's warm, they'll go out and poop. Otherwise, they'll hold on to it until it is warm.
So I have a question.
Yes.
They don't open them again unless necessary.
Yeah.
If you do like fondant or something like that.
Yeah.
That's okay?
Sure, absolutely. Crack open the top, get something in there and get out of there. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's what Dr. John says on our Arkansas calendar. All right, so topic I want to talk about a little bit about is known as Darwinian beekeeping. I'm sure you've heard the name if you've been around beekeeping. Tom Seeley, Dr. Seeley, he's been a researcher since probably the late 70s. And this was one of his many books. And the last kind of chapter of this, he finally put together his thoughts on Darwinian beekeeping. So when they're done playing back there, they'll pass around a handout for y'all. Handout time. Handout time. But just a little bit on Dr. Seeley, if you're not familiar with him. He's a researcher. His playground is the Arnott Forest. That's his research area. He studied wild bees there since 1978. And he came up with this concept, or he just named it for no particular reason, Darwinian beekeeping. Also called bee-friendly beekeeping. Some people just call it natural beekeeping, although probably not the best way to describe it. But one of his first publications was back in January 2029 in the Bee Culture magazine. And he's refined it over the years. And then finally, when he wrote that book, the very last chapter of the book is where he kind of discussed this kind of concept. But this is one point that he makes I wanted to move it up front. He kind of makes it at the end of all the statements. And that is, it's definitely not for everyone. Commercial beekeepers certainly couldn't do any of the things he recommends. Otherwise, they'd be out of business, probably not making a dime. And probably not for urban beekeepers. So really, he says, it's really an option for small-scale rural beekeepers. And as it says, avoid chemical treatments and satisfied with modest honey crops. So he goes through about 20 points, and over time he's changed those points, and he's certainly not saying those 20 are just the exclusive, that's the everything, okay? So if you read something else and you see Darwinian Beekeeping by Tom Seeley and you see a different point than I make on these, I'm not lying to you or anything. He probably changed it along the way. This is from his 2029 paper that was in Bee Culture. Okay, so his first point is that bees are different. Over the years, there were genetic adaptations to their various environments. As we know, we like to call our favorite, around here we get a lot of the Italians, right? But there's also Caucasian bees, right? They developed in a certain region. Anybody ever deal with Caucasian bees? Did yours produce a lot of propolis? Stick everything together? Yeah. I haven't had them in over a year, and I'm still trying to clean up some of the hives. Man, do they use propolis. Carnelians? I know you have some carnelians, right? They develop in different regions. The Russians, for me, they were the worst bees I ever had. They bit me every chance they got. They just hated me. I even tried speaking Russian to them, but I wasn't really sure of the words, so maybe that was it. Somebody gave me bad words to use. No. They actually, thankfully, they just absconded one day. The whole hive just left. And I shed no tears when I went there, and it was empty. Anybody know what kind of bees these are? Buckfast bees, yes, buckfast bees. If I had something to give you, I would give it to you. All right? So basically, one of the things he recommends is, try to stick with local bees, local queens if you're buying queens from locals. That's just one of the tips that he has.
What do you think the most prominent variety is around here?
Italians.
Just the wild.
Yeah. Like each area had their specific bees, but any more around the U.S., you can pretty much say they're all mutts. Unless you have a specific program, like there are some pure Russian-bred bees, but they're isolated, so there's no other bees around, and the males, and oftentimes they're instrumentally inseminated to make sure that it stays pure. Up in Canada, the Saskatraz bees, that's an area that there's nothing around there, so they're able to maintain purity. But for the most part, bees are going to be mutts, mixes of everything.
Every beekeeper is told to start with mountains. So
Yeah.
the most produced, easy to get. So
Yeah. Okay, another big difference that he talks about a lot is that colonies live widely spaced across the landscape in the wild. Right? His original research was pre-Varroa. Again, he had that 42,000 acres of the forest to go around and find bees and trees, wild bees, and there's not a lot of managed bees around him. And he found they were roughly about 2.83 colonies per square mile. And then just for comparison, after Varroa, he figured they'd be next to nothing. And when he went out and found bees, it was still around 2.8. And he talks about that a little bit later. So, think about managed bees. There's a truckload at California for the almond pollination, right? There's a truckload arriving. This picture is from Texas Bee Supply. They do broker bees that go there as well. So there they are. These are the bees actually out there pollinating in California for the almond pollination. And then this year, there's quite a bit of dead outs. And this is actually a close-up of some of the dead out hives. There were rows and rows of those in this the original picture that's blown out. You can see rows and rows of the dead outs that they had because of the whole thing that we had this year. Thousands and thousands of dead hives there at the pollination in California. I think they predicted they were going to be about 300,000 hives short as a result, and it wasn't quite that bad, but it was pretty close. So some of his recommendations are, you should space colonies 100 to 160 feet apart. Again, remember in the front he said, it's not for urban beekeepers, not for commercial beekeepers, because I know I couldn't space mine 100 to 160 feet apart. And of course, probably a lot of people, but maybe some rural beekeepers could do that. But by doing that, it really helps to reduce damages by viruses and things like that get spread. I can you could almost guarantee that if you look back at some of those pictures, it's kind of hard to say, well, this hive here has some viruses and none of these others are going to get affected. I mean, they're all pretty close. They're all together, especially drones. Drones will drift quite a bit, so they'll help bring in viruses to other colonies. Wish I had brought my mouse. There we go. Did it again. I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. All right. Okay, another thing that he points out as being what he considers a big difference is the size of the hives. This is kind of what he found, again, studying his wild bees in the forest. Said that typically hives are about 45 liters. Tended to avoid too small or too large, maybe nothing more than around 100 liters. And then again, very large populations barely went over 160 liters. And then just for comparison, we have some of the sizes for some of the common equipment that we use. Right? So you can see that just adding a couple of deep frames and some honey supers, you're getting pretty close to the max that probably bees would prefer. So there's again, Texas Supply, I believe, was the one who had this picture, but that's probably quite a bit bigger than most bees would prefer to have. Now, they say in their caption to this that that's Blake Shelton, but I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's bigger than that. And far better looking than that guy. All right. Okay, another big difference, of course, as I was asking about the Caucasians, is hives in nature tend to have a lot of propolis. They tend to surround the inner sides of their hive with propolis. That's kind of a picture of some propolis around the entrance. I'm going to talk about propolis again in a moment, so we'll kind of skip that. And then wall thickness tends to be another difference. Again, in the wild, trees tend to be 2 to 6 inches or more, depending on the trees where they go. R value between 5 and 15. And then again, they tend to line their hives with propolis. Standard Langstroth equipment, generally around 3/4 of an inch, and generally a very low R value. I mentioned here some of the newer hives, Apimays, like the ones I use, anywhere from 6.9 to 7. They were developed in Turkey, really relatively cold weather in the mountains of Turkey and stuff, and then polystyrene. Now there is some hives now that wooden boxes, of course, that they're doing the rough interior as opposed to smooth interior, because they're finding that maybe with the rough interior, the bees will add more propolis to it. At the Honeybee Expo a couple years ago, they were doing demonstrations of cutting up the wood to make it more rough on the inside. Still, the jury's out on that. Not sure that it makes any major difference if you do that to your hives. But several companies have been kind of working together on that, coming up with some ideas there. But to get more propolis on the inside to mimic the natural hives where they build a lot of propolis. Well, no, it generally helps them manage temperatures and keep out deal with pests and disease and stuff. It's not really going to add much in terms of R value to the inside of the hive. But that's why I find it interesting, is because most beekeepers, over the years, we've tried to not have bees that made a lot of propolis, because you're trying to get inside the hives and stuff, and they're all sticky. And then now, years later, we're saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe having all that propolis in the hive is not a bad idea after all. So, you live and learn, right?
So, got a question for you.
Yeah.
The slide before that said that it had an R factor of
5 to 15.
5 to 15.
And that's, again, according to some of this research. I don't know. I've never done any of that.
So a regular beehive has R value of 1.
Yeah. Well, just a 3/4 inch piece of wood. But they're looking at thick walls in a tree, 2 to 6 inches. So.
Do they know how much honey that chews up by?
I'm sorry?
How much honey that uses by having a lower R value?
No. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's research on it. I haven't gotten into everything yet. Again, another classic difference, entrances. Right? Hives, natural hives, wild hives, generally 15 feet or more off the ground. Again, some of the benefits, obviously, protection from predators, defense against pests, wind and moisture regulation, and entrance size and orientation. Now, this was an interesting one because they said in the northern hemisphere, they tend to face south when they studied those. So then they figured, well, when we study a bunch in the southern hemisphere, they'll probably be facing north, right? Because they kind of thought that made sense. They were facing south too. So it just seems to be a preference, apparently, of bees. Nobody really knows why. Of course, there's the managed bees. We don't really go 15 feet off the ground or anything like that, right? That might be a little bit low, but I usually use about the size of 2 cinder blocks stacked and then put the hive on top of them. Another difference, plentiful drone comb. In nature, it says about 25 to 30% of the comb in a hive is drone. And he mentioned some benefits of having that, promoting drone comb colony, diverse gene pools, things like that. Of course, generally in managed, it's much less. We tend to try to limit the amount of drone comb we have, right? Drones don't really produce honey for us. All they do is really take up resources. So by using foundation that's pre-stamped with a pattern, tends to limit how much drone comb if we don't give them a lot of extra space. Now they will, if they need it, make drones, but Probably not anything like that. And then with Varroa, it's very common now. You have those drone frames to where we kind of encourage the laying of drones so we can take that frame out and freeze it and kill all the mites, right? Because mites develop more in drone because drones take longer to develop. So mites tend to generally prefer drone comb. So, that's one of his differences he mentions. All right. Now, the next few I just grouped together because they're they're related: stable nest environment, rarely disturbed, and infrequent relocations. 2015, he found that most of the feral honeybees density was significantly higher that were undisturbed areas of a national park compared to disturbed areas. Right? And then, I don't know about this statement here. That's the definition of absconding, when all the bees leave, but I don't know if that's the primary reasons are overheating, lack of food, or frequent disturbance. Because I know when my Russians left, they had plenty of food. I didn't want to disturb them after they kept stinging me, so I didn't do that many frequent. And the hive wasn't any hotter than any of the others. I had temperature gauges in all my hives at the time, and so I think they just got sick of me and left, which again was no big deal. Also, if you're not managing mites and they get a heavy mite load, they will tend to all leave, from what I've read. And then this is just some of the things that mess around that we do as beekeepers, right? We modify the nest organizations. Have anybody ever, what is that called when you put different, checkerboarded their frames so you get the bees to draw out other frames, right? That disturbing the natural order of things. I always recommend when you do inspections, you kind of put them back in the same order, right, that you have them. Right? Checkerboarding is a way to get some comb drawn out when you have maybe just foundation and the bees aren't touching it. Then you take out and then put that in between. So they might draw that out. But apparently that's not a good thing to do. I guess nobody does that in the wild.
I've done that. The one that had all the bees on it, one next to it, and I put two full, then one on each side.
Yep.
Empty.
Yep. They
filled it all up from them other frames. They did not start another company.
Didn't start another one. Yep.
So I said, well, I learned a lesson there. So.
Some people have, from what I understand, have very good success with it. I've never really done it, so.
I haven't had success with it either.
You haven't had success? No. I don't recall doing it, but now you get me, guys make me want to try to see if I have any success with it or not. Of course, that'd be next year, not now. All right, now again, here this is going to be kind of controversial, so some of you might throw things at me, but that's okay. I was lecturing today in class. I got things thrown at me already. All right, so again, he's talking about novel viruses in the wild. So you can kind of read this, but this was from his studies in his Arnott forest. He has a really cool visual of this, and I wish I could find it again, but I couldn't. But like here, basically saying survival of the fittest, right, in nature. As I said, he thought that after the Varroa, when he went out there and started doing the whole thing he did from over again, going to try to find bees, that he would have a hard time finding any. And he found just as many as before Varroa. So that's what he's... Change the slide. And so after further studying, this is kind of something that he kind of came up with as to why that was, and that is swarming. Bees like to swarm. And he thought that, and others studied this as well, it seemed cavity volume may have played a part in that as well. Being that too big a cavity means it gives too much opportunity for the bees or the varroa to expand because you have more bees. But excuse me, he had a really good graphic that showed the DNA, the genomes of the bees from 1978, his first few years, and then after he started collecting bees after varroa. And what he found was they lost a lot of different genetic diversity. It went down to, he said that they could basically say that the entire forest was repopulated by 6 queens. They went from all kinds of different, Carnelian, they had some, even in New York there where it's cold, they had Africanized bee genetics there, everything. But then after varroa, it was basically down to 6 Italian bees, more or less, that repopulated everything. Again, this one kind of makes sense. I kind of combine those together as well. Again, manage colonies. We might put them in areas, especially if we're doing pollination or something, pollination services. During that almond pollination, there's not a lot of other stuff for the bees to eat out there. They're there for a reason, and they're pretty much stuck with almonds. Again, wild colonies are not treated for diseases. This one was very controversial as well. There were a lot of people that wrote things about it afterwards and really threw a fit. So I move on to the next one. But basically he's saying, bees that are near agriculture are going to be dealing with treatments that people do for agriculture. People, like I know you mentioned that at one point they sprayed your area. I know you have those beautiful signs that say, don't spray because I have bees here. But out in the wild, nobody's out there spraying his 4,000 acre forest. So that's basically what he was saying. But we all know that pollution and things travel, and so that's not necessarily the case. Right? Now, this is the one that really gets people upset. And that is, he says, if you want to be a true treatment-free beekeeper, you must proactively destroy any colonies that do not show mite resistance. If he doesn't monitor mite loads and if he doesn't destroy colonies before the collapse, he is not selecting for mite-resistant bees at all. In fact, he is actually selecting for virus mites. That's what he says. In the strongest, most resilient, most well-adapted mites that are destroying the colonies. And the unwitting beekeeper is giving those mites a leg up by not destroying them once they begin to overwhelm a colony. All right, so that created a lot of stir. A lot of people got upset over that. And then to add insult to injury, he said if you're not willing to kill your mite-susceptible colonies, then you need to treat them and requeen them with a queen of mite-resistant stock.
How do you know a queen is mite resistant?
You pay heavily to buy one. Uh-huh. He doesn't raise and sell bees, so but yeah, isn't Corey mite resistant? Yeah, up in Missouri. Yeah, there's several around. There's several different producers that have that's what they do. They breed mite resistant bees. I don't know that.
So the people that are producing mite-resistant bees destroy hives that are...
Yes, some do. Yes, many do. Now some will, because they'll have different yards and such, and so when they find the ones that have the best, then that's the ones they'll pick for breeding from, and the others they won't breed from. I don't remember. I've seen many, but a lot of them will rate all their different hives, and then for the breeder queens will only come from certain hives that they use. I think Corey does that as well. Yeah, they have a lot of them have scoring things that they use. Now this is kind of a rebuttal to that whole idea of killing off all your hives and stuff, right? Viral loads are higher than ever, where bees are requiring more and more care, and colonies in some areas are dying in record numbers. We cannot continue to condone the casual beekeeper who believes treatment-free means hands-off. If nothing else, beekeepers must be responsible towards each other. You can no longer let the mites be mites because you are too lazy to do anything about them. There are simply too many colonies too close together with too many problems. You should take responsibility for your mites or get out of beekeeping. So that was somebody responding directly to, in regards to Tom Seeley's thing. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm in a beekeeping program, master beekeeping program through the University of Florida. And the director there, Dr. Jamie Ellis, he would subscribe to this. He says, once you put bees in a box, they're no longer wild natural bees. You have a responsibility to them, whether it's feeding, whether it's treating for mites, whatever it is. Dr. Leo up in Missouri, that's horizontal hives. He has a completely different approach, right? He says if you feed your bees, you develop lazy bees. So he goes in his hive twice a year, once at the beginning of the year to make sure they got stuff, and at the end of the year to take honey. And that's it. So you have extremes, right?
So if a hive dies, it dies.
Yeah. He claims to not have losses and not unmanageable losses. I mean, bees die. I mean, that happens. Everything dies. But I went and went to one of his seminars one time and listened, and it sounded interesting, but, you know, the different approaches, different philosophies, different beliefs, right? But as long as I'm still studying under Dr. Jamie Ellis, then I would say this right here. You should take responsibilities for your mites or get out of beekeeping. And if he's watching this now, Dr. Ellis, good on you. Right? Okay, a couple other things. Differences, pollen's not trapped, honey's not taken. Again, taking a lot of honey stresses the bees. Trapping honey, or does anybody trap pollen? Have you ever trapped pollen? No? Okay. I never have either. I was watching a YouTuber the other day, and first thing when he went in his hive, he said, wow, look at all this pollen. I need to get the traps out. So I was like, okay. But yeah, you know, these things tend to stress bees, right? Beeswax is not removed. Right? Beeswax incurs a energy burden. They have to replace beeswax. It takes quite a bit of energy, and here's a couple studies that they showed that. Of course, if you just take honey, remove the cappings, and put them back, you know, put the frames back, that's of course less stress because they only have to replace the cappings. But even in their hive, when they use honey, they still have the wax, right? They've just taken it off, and they can still reuse it if they want, right? So when you take it out, you know, you're adding a little bit of extra stress. So again, going back to the original slide where he said, you know, it's where he's talking about it's not for everybody to follow Darwinian beekeeping. You've got to be willing to deal with, you know, modest amounts of honey you might take from them. Certainly not if you're in business to make a living with honey. You're probably not going to want to say, well, gee, I'm not going to remove cappings. I did comb honey one time, and of course, that's the worst thing you can do in terms of for the bees, because you're taking the whole comb, you're taking everything, right? At least when you just extract honey, you just remove the cappings and put the frames back. But I did comb honey. Oops. This one I think is a relatively interesting one, and there's a lot more research being done in this area. And that is bees choose who they're going to make a queen, right? And so, again, that's probably the most important decision the hive makes, right? Because without a good queen, they're goners. And so this was a really interesting study there that these folks did, where they were looking at nutritional status as far in that bees might take a look at in terms of which larvae they're going to make into a queen. Relatedness, there it was. I couldn't think of the word. Nepotism, right? For most of the time they figured, well, bees are going to favor their own queen's eggs, and so if you mix them up and do different things, they're not going to, but they're going to pick their own queen's eggs to make into queen bees. But that's not actually the case. They did tons of different mixtures of bees. They did queens that were open-aired, inseminated. They did instrumentally inseminated queens, and then they mixed up the eggs to the different bees, made the different hives queenless to see which larvae they would turn into queens. And surprisingly, it wasn't necessarily the ones the bees were related to. It's not necessarily the queens. And nutritional status of the larvae really seems to be a bigger deciding factor for the bees than genetic relatedness. So I really found that interesting, and there were some other things in there that I got this study. I haven't gone all the way through it, and then of course a couple others that relate to it. But it's as opposed to, right? What's he doing there? Nope. Grafting bees, right? The beekeeper's picking which larvae are going to be used to make queens, right? Grafting queens, right? That's how most are done, right? So the question is, does that gentleman know better, or do the bees know better? And there's some great articles on that. Okay, and then we get to, again, drones, the last couple. Again, drones compete freely. Drone brood not removed from mite control. We already talked about that. Again, these are not the only ones that he has. He's mixed them around a lot, and he certainly said there's more than 20 differences, but these were the ones that he felt the need to write about. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, on that handout, some of you should have just 2 pages. They're front and back. And then I forgot to print the other ones front and back, so some of you may have 4 pages. But the last couple, he gives his tips or things and kind of some of the stuff we mentioned. And that is distance your hives as far as you can, as much as you can. Try to stick with local stock, things like that. But certainly, as he said, it's not for everybody, and not everybody could even practically implement it. Okay, it's just not something that we could practically do. It's just something to consider. All right. Are there any questions on anything that that I just talked about?
What if you don't buy any queens? Don't buy any bees. You just catch them.
You just catch them, right? Yeah.
So, that's what he said there, that I would have to kill them.
Not necessarily.
But,
Yeah.
But I've had them for 8 years.
Yeah.
I caught every one of them, and I ain't had no problem.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
problem I have is rock. And I try to keep them all the same, but it don't make any difference. Because somebody else is over the way or whatever comes and they're bigger and takes them out.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. There was something interesting when another aspect of the bees that survived after the varroa in the wild compared to before. They said the bees were significantly smaller than what they were before, from 1978. Because of course he catches bees and they whatever bee people do, or insect people, and track them and do all that. But they noticed that they were significantly smaller after varroa, all the bees that they caught. So I thought that was interesting, because I know like your bees are like small. Your bees are cute little bees. Yeah. So I thought that was just kind of neat. And most of them are, as he said, in the forest, are still just pretty much Italians. Any other questions or discussions of anything? Anything at all? Honey. Who else has harvested honey besides Ryan this time? Anybody? You still gonna harvest?
Well, I'm running a deep and a super. And last year you was talking about it on your thing, and I had to make sure that super was full. All the brood was down.
Yeah.
At that time, they didn't have nothing up there, so I made sure that was all full. And everything that wasn't brood, I had some extras, filled it completely full. Then, toward February or that, I had to add some, I put some Hive Alive in there.
Yep.
To keep them going, because I checked it when they're on one of them warm days.
Yep.
There wasn't hardly anything, one or two, so I had to put Hive Alive on top, and it made it until everything started flowing. Yeah, I mean, I tried deeps years ago, and I never could get I kept them through the winter, but whenever I tried to split them or whatever, I had a mess. I even tried to take one box and move it over and just watch which one had the queen, which one was making one. While I was watching one, the other one had 5 or 6, and it swarmed 2 or 3 times. I mean, each one of them done it, and I said, okay. I scraped everything off, make sure there's a queen in each one. And then it finally, because I mean, once they're that big, it seems like every frame has got 4 or 5 queen cells on it.
I mean, swarming is a natural behavior. It's the way they reproduce. It's the way the hives, they survive that way, right? And that's another thing he mentions in the wild. I mean, they swarm, but that's something most beekeepers try to keep them from doing, right? But that's just a natural. And some bees are more swarmy than others. From what I've heard, I heard the Caucasians were pretty swarmy. Yeah, I didn't have any problems with mine. Corneolans? Swarming? How about yours?
This is my first year with them.
Oh, it's your first year with them?
I'll sign up next year.
Yeah. Damn.
So I have a horizontal hive, okay, and they've been done really well in it, and I'm looking at insulating for the winter, and I've watched some videos, and they're talking about laying like a pillow.
Pillow on top, yeah.
Okay, but right now, the bees are coming and going, I've got everything, there's individual boards that I cover up the frames with, and then there's the one in the middle with the circle in the middle, and they come and go out of that up into the roof. Am I laying that like right on top of that? Do I take that out for the winter? I don't even really understand, but all of the hives seem to have that.
The circle that they go into the roof?
It's one of the boards is flat.
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
has an oval circle.
Is that for like feeding them?
I don't know. Well, that's what I did in the spring for a little while.
Oh, okay.
So if I laid a pillow or something on top of that, do they need access to that area?
So I don't ever report horizontal hives.
Yeah.
Their main entrance is on the bottom.
On the bottom or the sides, right?
So I've got 5, and I can pick and choose which ones I give them access to.
What you described sounds like an inner cover.
Yeah.
It's another
Yeah.
thing that sits between the frames and the lid.
Yes.
So they all have holes in them.
Okay.
They're there to help with ventilation and a few other things. They're not really necessarily for the bees to have another way to get out of.
Right.
And in the winter, they won't really want to use it anyway.
So I should cover that up.
I would say I personally wouldn't worry about covering that hole up because it's not something they would want to use.
Well, I want to insulate the top of it because first of all, it's a peaked roof, so there's all kinds of airspace in there.
Yeah.
So I want to keep them warm, and heat rises. So I want to.
Right, he's going to rise up through that opening. Just like it is now, it's rising up through that opening.
Right.
Now the benefit of that hole is if you did need to put emergency food on, that's a great natural spot for it to sit for the bees to get to.
But if I put a pillow on top, they can't get up there. So I guess it's.
Well, cover the hole.
Yeah.
Yes, but if you leave gap, like if you wanted an emergency feed, whatever, that's a nice natural spot for a piece of farm to go. It's on top of that hole.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So they don't have to climb through the hole.
Yeah, you could put it right on top of the hole, and they can eat from the bottom. Yeah. Yeah. Who else got bee? Who else? You're the only one with a horizontal hive, right? No one else has a horizontal hive?
I've built one, but I haven't caught any bees yet.
Oh, okay.
And,
So next year you'll be having the horizontal hive. Cool. And how's our beekeepers in the back there? Let's see, if I remember right, you all got you bought hives from someone you used to buy honey from, is that correct?
We don't know what questions to ask. We're learning less every day.
Well, how's your bees doing to begin with?
I think they're doing good. I went out a few weeks ago and I forgot to zip my pants down. We have a mean hive, so but I think that there's still a lot of brood on them. And
Good.
a lot of cap honey. The opinion is do not collect honey the first year, and then others are saying, oh, you definitely want to get some honey out of there the first year.
I mean, you deserve some, but I wouldn't go wild and say, well, I'm going to sell 10 pounds of honey this year, but.
I would say if anybody is gathering honey, please reach out to the group and let us come watch or help.
You just missed him. I think you had it on Facebook, didn't you? You were looking
We had
a honey harvesting party.
We have people over in the garage. How would we know that? Well, we just put it on our Facebook and let people know. We weren't sure how it was going to go, and pretty much every beekeeper here will tell you if you really want to get a bunch of honey, you will be sorely disappointed.
Yeah.
Here, no one gets a lot of honey. And I was disappointed by it, but no one else knows that. Like a lay person would never know that's a small amount.
Yeah.
They're like, that's amazing. And I'm like, that's one box from 5 miles. Like, that is not amazing. But yeah, that was just
Yeah, you get less than you think you're going to get, and it's messier than you think it's going to be.
that's it. I won't see any more honey.
Yeah.
Well, what if they're still getting stuff from what they can, but I'm leaving all the rest of the food that they can make now for them.
So you have like 45 pounds of honey? Isn't that?
He goes 4 to 5 frames. He does 4 frames of honey. That's his overwintering.
I want at least 4 frames.
4 full frames.
Whether it's 4 for a medium, you want 4 frames. I want 4 deep.
He wants 4 deeps, and it's because you only do 1 brood box, right? And it's deep. Yeah.
Okay, when you say that, so some of my frames have the honey around the top and the
Yep.
side, and then you want that bottom part empty because that's where they're going to cluster, right?
So
Not necessarily.
And then they climb up and eat the honey.
So if you think about their nest, they want to be in a central spot,
Yes.
and they they build layers out. So the outermost layers are where they'll pack on the honey
Right.
on the sides.
Yes.
So I want basically 2 frames
On each side.
of where they're brooding, on where
Solid honey.
Solid honey.
And then, but where do they hang out during the winter?
just right in the middle, in that same little cluster ball. So they'll
On frames. in the
Yes.
middle.
So that they'll have like 3 or 4 frames where they live with their brood and whatever pollen they finish eating, and then on the other sides of that's where they'll pack the honey in, and then that's it.
And you've got supers on top of that?
I keep a super on it, but that's because I don't have shims for emergency food, so I keep a box on it. So when I need to go in and drop
But it-
Rondon in February, I need to make it.
But it doesn't have honey in it, right? It's just a box.
It's a box.
His entire honey is the 4 full frames in the box.
So you got one box. You don't have one on top of it.
And right now I have a super on top with a frame feeder because that's the way I do it. So I'm packing it on with that, and I'll leave that there all winter. But there's not really any frames for the feeders.
Yeah.
It's just a brood box.
So your box is empty, there's no frames on the top.
I think I left some in, but I have no intention of filling it out.
Yeah.
I don't care if they do or they don't. It's really for me to use my feeder.
Yeah.
If they put stuff in, good for them.
Yes, sir.
When do you determine I'm not gonna get back into the box until spring? I mean, is there a date, time? Is it the first frost? Is it what?
Again, it's kind of, you ask 5 beekeepers a question, and you're going to get 7 or 8 answers, just like any other field, really, right? But I just go basically by the temperatures. I want to have everything done by November, by Thanksgiving, basically, is kind of when I shoot, depending on what I kind of start looking at the weather in October, the long range forecast, but I'm shooting for around November. And then if I have some warm days, I might peek at them, but I'm not going to go in them. But that's just me. I don't know what.
Yeah, my mental, before I look at weather, because it is to me temperature dependent, like I don't want to start messing with it as soon as we start seeing like below 40-degree nights.
Yeah.
I want to be done by then. But that's usually end of or after October.
Yeah.
So that's why I hold honey late, is because usually we have all of September and October that they can be started productive in. So I'm going to try to pack on the food now. Normally I would have pulled it in August, and they would have been August all this time. But I noticed they don't struggle with that, so I decided to
So after Halloween.
yeah, and if we get colder sooner, then that
Yeah.
might be bad news for me. That's the bet
Yeah.
that I made. But usually we're still pretty warmish all through October, so I'm hoping that works. I did put my introducers on this past week on the widest setting. Because I have 1 week having it on the drop, and the other we're starting to see temperatures drop to 60 or lower, so I thought might as well.
Is anybody feeding now?
I mean, I am.
I know you're feeding because you're feeding? Any? On and on? I know Phyllis is feeding and she's upset because they're not taking it.
That might be a good thing.
That's what I was.
You think so?
I was.
Well, I don't see
Yeah, I
any,
mean,
I
they
don't
know
see
when
any
they
honey
eat.
coming in. I don't see any pollen on their legs coming in.
Well, that's okay.
So bees won't eat your food if they have other food
Right.
that they want. So if
Yeah.
it's a natural source, they'll
Yeah.
prefer it over the bee.
They better not be going to somebody else's house.
Now, I would tell you, prior to last Tuesday, when we went in the hive, the 2 inspections before that, after the second one, I was getting real nervous about our hive. And then I was like, oh no, we got to do something. And so I said this Tuesday, and I was like, oh my, open that thing up. It looked beautiful. I was like, oh, thank God.
And we found the queen.
And we found the queen, and everything was fine. And so that's why right after that is when you said they're not eating. I said, they're probably finding stuff out there. I have 3 hives right next to each other because to heck with Tom Seeley, I don't have that much room. 2 of them are taking food. The other one won't. All 3 of them, I give them food whenever they need it. And they're doing fine. I went in there. They're fine. So the other 2 are making some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sugar water honey. They're going to be ready for the winter. Man, does it look good.
I did a short experiment. So I wanted to see if my bees would drop more wax starting in like July, just in case they were going to be productive. And I had seen a video that said the method you choose to feed your bees with will help or hurt their wax production.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they see specifically, like frame feeders, like what I use,
Yep.
and dump a gallon on it once, is not great for wax production because they'll just gorge themselves. So a drip feeder bucket or the inboard jars works better because it kind of makes them work at it and makes them more productive. So I tried that. I bought little jar feeders, which I've never wanted to use them, I still love them. And I saw 0 difference with that. So, hooray. Just letting y'all know if you ever want to know, like, does that make it more productive for wax building? I don't think it does.
Mine haven't been
David
making.
Burns was one of those people saying that. Bob Benny also said it. But
Yeah.
didn't see any difference.
That's like I've always heard like to think about, direct sunlight to help keep the hive beetles versus if they're in the shade. I've done it again this year. I did some in the sun, I hadn't seen any difference in hive beetles in either one. The only hive that I ever saw a problem with hive beetles was the one that I didn't put in my little towels. That one went crazy as soon as I put the towels in, that was the end of that problem.
These little Scott
Yeah.
towels that are kind of fabric.
The one, I showed them, the little blue ones. I have the beetle be gone ones,
Oh,
which some people use Swiffers. Things like
okay, I've seen.
Yeah. You saw them in my
Yeah.
kit there when I was doing it. Yeah.
That doesn't, you're saying that didn't really do anything.
Oh, it was great. I mean, the one hive that I had, one hive I did not put them in. Right, one in the sun and one and there was no difference. Put them in, they were fine. After that, I haven't seen that many beetles. So they seem to work. But you gotta really stay on top of them because they get all tangled in there and then they get pretty gnarly quick, and so then they're not going to be effective.
Pretty gnarly quick.
Pretty gnarly quick. All right, well, it's about 8 o'clock, so